Hello everyone, today I will give you a lecture to introduce the energy balance in food system. My lecture has the following 4 parts. The first law of thermodynamics. After the first part, we can express the law of thermodynamics into equation of energy balance, and then we introduce the heat transfer in food system. Finally, we will introduce the latent heat and the sensible heat. So let's move to the first part. The first law of thermodynamics. According to the first law of thermodynamics, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another form. This single sentence tells us 3 important meanings. The first, everything needs energy input to keep going. This is because energy cannot be created, right? Second, energy can be internal or stored energy. Second, energy can change from one form to another form. For example, from potential energy to kinetic energy. I can give you some example of this 3 meaning. Let's see the example. The first example is the hydroelectricity plant. Water comes from here. It will be fall down from the high elevation to the low elevation. Its reduced potential energy will be changed into the mechanical energy of the turbines here. The mechanical energy of the turbines will change into the electricity, and the electricity will be delivered to our home, our university, or our office. We can use this electricity energy for cooking, for turning on the light, or for air conditioner, or for refrigerator. The second, this example tells us energy can change from one form to another form, from the potential energy to mechanical energy, then change into electricity. Second example I give you is related to everyone's daily life. All the human beings need food and nutrient. We need food every day. The energy within the food and nutrient will be stored in our human body as ATP. So energy can be internal or stored energy. This energy stored as ATP will be further released when we need it. For example, when we're running, when we're thinking, when we're playing, we need the energy. Then we can release the energy from ATP to keep our biological function. Let's move to the next part. Energy. The first law of thermodynamics can be expressed in a form of a word equation, which is shown here. Total energy entering the system minus total energy leaving the system should be the energy, the change in the total energy of the system. I can show you how to get this equation. Here I give you a system. We call it system 1. We put some energy in it. We say energy in. Then system 1 will be further changed into the system 2, and some energy can be released out of the system. We say energy out. According to the energy, first law of thermodynamics, energy is conservation. So the energy in here plus energy of the system 1 should equals to the energy out here plus the energy of system 2. If we move the energy out to the left part, it should be energy in minus energy out. Then we move to the system 2 into the right part. It should be the system 2 minus the system 1. So you can get the equation here. E in minus E out equals to third E system, which is system 1, energy of system 1 minus energy of system 2. So, after this process, I think it can help you to remember the equation easily. Energy can exist in many forms. Let's recall the example here. It can be exist as the potential energy, mechanical energy, electricity. All these forms of energy is very important to our daily life. But when we move to the food engineering system, heat is becoming a very important form of energy. When we baking, cooking, pasteurization, all this food processing, is required for us to put some energy in it to get the final product. So we will put some time to study the heat. What is heat? Heat is easy to sense. The reason is because heat is related to the temperature change. Heat exchange between a system, between system and surroundings is driven by the temperature difference. If there is no temperature difference, there is no heat transfer from the system to the surrounding, or from the surrounding to the system, right? And the direction of the heat transfer is always from the hot object to the cold object. You should keep this point in mind. Here is some example. It's very cold outside. Every people want to stay in a warm place. For example, I want to start in the warm library. People don't want to reading books in the cold river. This is because we want to get some heat from the surrounding to our human body to make our to feel warm. Next, let me further look at the heat. We can denote heat with a sample Q. The unit of Q is joule. The joule. It's named after the English physics James Joule. Joule started a lot of work related to the nature of heat and the relationship between heat and mechanical work. This is the reason we name the unit. We use his name as the unit of the heat to remember him. So here is kind of the photograph of James Joule. The heat can be negative can be positive or negative. For example, here is one system. Here is its surroundings. If we put the energy into the system, let's say the system gain energy, the Q is positive. When we get some energy, out of the system, let's say the system lost energy. In this situation, the energy should be negative. So keep in mind, when energy is negative and when energy is positive. Now let's further look at two very important forms of heat: latent heat and sensible heat. All the pure substance has three forms: solid form, liquid form, and gas form. For example, water. Water has three forms. The liquid form is water, we call it water. The solid form, we call it ice. And the gas form, we call it steam. We all know that water can change from one form to another form. We can also increase the temperature of ice, increase temperature of water, increase temperature of steam, right? So during this process, it's involved in two forms of heat transfer: latent heat and sensible heat. So what is latent heat? Latent heat is related to change in the phase between liquid, gas, and solid. For example, when the water changes from the liquid form to a solid form, or from solid form to a gas form, during this process, there is no temperature change. The whole change is involved in the phase change. Then we say there is a latent heat. On the other hand, when we increase the temperature of the water, let's say from the 20 degree to 90 degree, during this process, we call there is a change of sensible heat. So now we know that sensible heat is related to the change in temperature of without the change in phase, whereas the latent heat is related to change in phase without the change in temperature, right? So you may ask, why we change the phase? Then why we need to put some energy if we want to change the solid form to a liquid form? We didn't saw a different temperature different during this process. So where does energy go? This is because when the ice in the solid form, they need to some molecular interaction to keep them like packed closely with each other. It needs to some interaction with the molecular. If we want to change the solid from the liquid form into the from the solid form into the liquid form, we need to separate the one molecular to another molecular. We need to get a molecular free to go, right? So we need to put some energy to pull out of each other to separate them from each other. This is the reason why we need to put some energy into the system. So here I give you some detailed example here how water is changed from one phase to another phase, and during this process we need latent heat, we need sensible heat. For example, if we change the water from a solid form to the liquid form gas, we further need to increase the temperature of the ice. In this process, we need to, in this process, it mainly involves in the latent heat, sensible heat. When we change the water from the solid phase to a liquid phase, there is a phase change here. So the process involves in its latent heat. So let's move to another part. How to calculate the latent heat and sensible heat. Here I give you two equations of how to calculate the sensible heat and latent heat. You can see there is a difference between the two equations here. The sensible heat can be calculated by the product of the mass, the specific heat capacity, and the temperature difference, whereas the sensible heat only need to calculate the mass and the specific latent heat. This is because the sensible heat involves in the temperature change, whereas the latent heat didn't involve in the temperature heat, right? Change, right? The specific sensible heat C and specific latent heat L is varies with temperature and pressure. So when we need to know the latent heat and sensible heat under the certain temperature and pressure, we have to look for it at a chart called the steam table. In the steam table, we can find the latent heat and sensible heat under the certain temperature and certain pressure. Next part, I want to give you an example of latent heat. And latent heat involves in the phase change and temperature of 3 phases of water. When the water changes from solid phase to a liquid phase, there is a latent heat called fusion. When there is a change from the liquid phase to a gas phase, we call there is a latent heat of vaporization. So, when the water changes from solid phase to a gas phase, it involves in the temperature change and true latent heat change, which is the latent heat of fusion and latent heat of vaporization. For example, the latent heat of the fusion for water at 0 temperature is 333, whereas the latent heat of vaporization of water at 100 temperature is 2200. So why the latent heat of vaporization is more than the latent heat of fusion? You can think it after class. We can discuss the answer on the second class. In the second class. Here, I can give you one simple example of calculation. 5 kilograms ice at -10 degrees centigrade is heated to melt into water at 10 degrees. I want you to calculate the sensible heat and latent heat change in this process. I can give you the specific latent heat and specific sensible heat capacity of ice and water. Let's see how to calculate it. Okay, so this example tells us ice from -10 degrees is changed into ice, changed into the water in the 10 degree. I want you to calculate the latent heat and the sensible heat during this process, right? So we can separate it into 3 parts. The first part we call it AB. Second part is BC. Third part CD. In the first part AB, there is change in the latent heat because the ice is changed temperature from -10 degree to 0 degree, right? So we need to use the equation of sensible heat, which is M times by C, specific heat of the specific sensible heat of the ice, times by the temperature difference, which is 10. Here, you can calculate the answer by yourself. The second part is BC. In this part, there is no temperature change here, right? Temperature is constant, the constant here. So you need to use the equation to calculate the latent heat. The latent heat is M times by the L. L is the latent heat of the fusion, which is 333, right? So this is the latent heat of the fusion. Let the ice change from the solid phase to the liquid phase. The third part is CD. CD is the sensible heat of water because the water changed from the 0 degree to 10 degree here, right? So you need to use this equation. Because you should keep in mind the sensible heat of water different from the sensible heat of ice. You have to look for the steam chart. I have already given you the number here, which is 333 or 4.8.1. You can use these 3 equations to combine the sensible heat and latent heat and sensible heat, the 3 parts, to calculate how much energy you have to input in the system to get the ice changed from the 10 degree into the water in the 10 degree.